Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about positioning. And the reason I'm talking about this topic is a lot of people online see positioning as like this holy grail, very difficult thing that product marketers sort of magically do. And it is quite difficult to get positioning right, but it is not as difficult as we think of it. And I think the huge reason most people think positioning is super hard is because we think if you position your product as one thing, you just have to stick to that one thing. But most people don't do that. Like I shift positioning all the time, and while it is good to sort of hold one positioning, you're likely going to be testing your positioning until you get one that sticks. So there's no pressure really for you to sort of get positioning right the first time around. If it doesn't work, it's okay to like switch it up, try something else until you find the positioning that works for the product. And so I'm going to talk about the different types of positioning, at least the most common ones, and how you can use them, just so that you have an idea of what positioning is and the types of positioning that exist, which you can use in your next positioning exercise. So the first type of positioning is the price-based positioning. And this type of positioning is just like the name. It's where you're positioning based on the price and comparing yourself to premium priced products. For a price sensitive market, for example, which is a market that is sensitive to very high prices, you might want to position yourself as a lower cost option, as a more affordable option. And we've seen this type of positioning with, for example, luxury brands versus fast fashion, fast food versus high end restaurants, etc. Because like the high end products are sort of difficult for the average person to get. And so these other brands that are fast food have sort of come up and become an affordable solution, which have made them billions and billions of dollars in revenue, right? So this is more ideal for markets where the premium priced goods are dominant. So if you're in a market where getting this particular product is very expensive, then it makes sense for you to position on the price sensitive scale and say, oh, we're much better than these guys because we're more affordable. If you're in a market where getting a particular product is expensive or premium priced, then you're in a good market for price positioning because you're able to go into that market and say, we're a more affordable option for XYZ. However, it needs to make sense. Like you need to still be able to give some kind of value so that people can actually love your product and that positioning can stick for you. If you're not giving any kind of value and you're cheaper, however cheaper you are, customers are still not going to be excited about exploring your product. So you need to be actually giving customers value. Now, on the reverse side of this price positioning is called like a value based positioning. I honestly still stick with it as price based, but it is called like value based positioning because it's sort of like a reverse of the price, where if you're in a market where everything is cheap and you're not able to get quality versions of a specific product, then releasing a product and positioning it as a more premium but high quality version of the cheaper affordable ones would make sense because you're able to target these customers that want to pay premium for better quality. However, you need to pay attention to the market. You need to understand if you're in a market where people can actually afford to pay premium. Because if you're in a market and the particular product is super cheap and affordable, you need to ask yourself why. Maybe the reason it is that way is because people are not ready to pay more money for that specific product. So you need to pay attention to the market and say, maybe people are willing to pay more money, but there are just no options available for better quality of this particular product. Then it makes sense for you to create a product and position yourself as a more premium but high quality version. And so like people are paying you premium because of the value. So this is like a reverse of the pricing, except this one is more focused on giving customers better value, better quality, better service, etc., and getting them to pay premium for it. The third type of positioning is competitive based positioning. And this is one where you're basically saying that your product is better than XYZ competitor. So when you're going head to head with a competitor and trying to get customers to use your product because you're better than the old way or the different way, then you're using competitive positioning. And a good example of this would be the Slack versus email thing, where Slack says, oh, what a replacement for email, what a new way to communicate, to do business communication or to communicate at work, right? Slack came and sort of challenged email because email was the dominant way that people were communicating at that time. In order to be able to do this really well, there has to be a dominant competitor in your market. Your market cannot be super saturated, because if your market is super saturated, then it sort of dilutes your positioning in a way that it won't work anymore. Slack was able to do this effectively because email was the dominant way that people were communicating at work. And so they come in with a product that was better, easier to use, all that cool stuff made sense, because now they're saying we're a better way to do this. It was easy for Slack to gain traction and build the business they've built today because it made sense at the time. But if you're in a market where there are multiple options for communicating at work, this won't work for you. So you need to pay attention to this kind of nuances when you're trying to position yourself. Like, don't do competitive positioning at all if you're in a saturated market. This only works for a market where there is one giant at the top, and then you're able to really attack that giant and tell users why they should choose you over them. The fourth type of positioning is a niche-based positioning, and we've seen this one become common these days because it's hard to build a product that no one has built, because now we've got millions and millions of products for customers. Customers are already choked because of the amount of products that they get to see and they use and interact with on a day-to-day. So more and more products these days have become niche and positioning themselves as niche versions of larger products. For example, having a product say, oh, we are just a savings and investment company. Now, this is in the financial service space, but they niche down to savings and investment. We've also seen it like across other industries where companies are niching down their product and offering a specific value instead of like covering the entire market. So like saying we're an e-commerce but for clothing only, or we're an e-commerce but for this other type of tools, just so that the product can relate to a specific type of customer. Because if you're trying to build an e-commerce business today, you'd be going up against giants like Amazon. And so it's going to be really difficult to make you become a go-to product for customers to use. But if you build an e-commerce for cars, then immediately people want to buy cars. It's easier for them to think about you before thinking of like maybe a general e-commerce store. I know you're not going to buy cars on on an Amazon, but you get the point. That's what niche-based positioning is. It's like finding a niche and then positioning yourself as the go-to for customers in that niche. This is the fifth. Now, the fifth type of positioning is the use case positioning. And this type of positioning is positioning your product in according to the way that people would use it. For example, if you want to create a fintech app, but there's already thousands of other fintech apps, how can you differentiate your fintech app from that other fintech app? So this positioning is pretty much saying, for example, this fintech app helps international students send money home, right? Because now when you say this kind of thing, you've basically made it clear how they would use this, your app, and how it's different from maybe another fintech app that is used to track expenses, or another fintech app that is used to transfer money or to pay for groceries or to pay everyday bills or to save money, because there's different types of fintech apps. So whenever you're differentiating your product based on how customers would use it, you're using a use case positioning. This is best used, especially when customers don't exactly know, or it's not easy for customers to understand how to use your product. So by using a use case based positioning, you're seamlessly telling them who it is for, how they would use it, right? Because if you say something like, we help international students send money home, then it makes sense. Like, you're immediately saying, I'm for international students, I'm going to help you send money home. It's very similar to a niche-based positioning, but it's not the same, because you can still do a niche-based positioning without telling them how they would use it. You can still say we're e-commerce for clothing. Whenever you're trying to call out a specific use case with your product because it makes customer understand you better, you're using a use case positioning. And this is actually very common. Like, we've seen a lot of brands use this use case positioning because it's just a lot easier to do. And maybe you've tried it in the past, maybe you've not. So these are my top 5 types of positioning to use, especially if you're just beginning to market a product and you haven't figured out which one works for you yet. You can try different types of positioning. You can even try a mix of them. There's no reason why you have to stick to one at a time. You can say, okay, we're going to position as the cheapest way for this niche. And so you're combining price and a niche in the same like positioning bracket. So you can definitely play around with your positioning. There's no need to be stiff. There's no need to be afraid or worried. If you try something and it doesn't work, it's okay to like switch it up and test something else. What I would say is that definitely pay attention to this type of positioning and what scenarios work best for them, because it's easy to sort of spend time, money, and energy doing one type of positioning in a wrong market, like doing competitive positioning in a highly saturated market, or doing a price positioning in a market with affordable options. So you want to sort of find a way to set yourself apart. You want to always think about what is my market, what the customers want, and that would immediately help you understand how to position yourself. If customers want quality, you want to do value-based positioning. If customers are more okay, if customers are more price sensitive and want affordable things, maybe a price-based positioning would make sense. But also pay attention to your market. And again, you can use a mix of them. If a price-based positioning makes sense for you in a very saturated market with like multiple affordable options, you can still use price and niche, right? So you're saying, okay, we're still going to stick with price because this particular market is price sensitive. Going premium will not work for us. So telling them anything else will not work unless we tell them they can actually afford it. So it might make sense to do both a mix of price and a mix of niche. So you're saying, yeah, I know that pricing everybody is sort of affordable here, but if you're looking for this specific type of thing, then we're the more affordable option for this specific niche. Now that would make sense for your product. So yeah, I hope this has helped you sort of understand positioning a little bit better. If you have questions around positioning, if there's anything you'd like me to clarify for you, definitely leave them in the comments and I would look at them and give you an answer. Bye.